Supply models the behaviors of sellers in markets. Sellers take into account many factors other than price, including the cost of producing the output and the number of other sellers in the market, when deciding how much output to supply to the market. Assuming that the main factors that influence selling decisions are held constant, except price, the model starts by showing how sellers respond to a change in the price of an item. Remember, the assumed goal of the seller is to maximize profit. If the cost of producing output is held constant, then an increase in the price of the product means the seller earns a greater profit and will be willing to make a greater amount of the output available. A supply function gives the relationship between price and quantity supplied, ceteris paribus. Supply is the quantity of a good or service that producers are willing and able to produce at a given price in a given time period. The following supply schedule shows the quantity supplied of bushels of wheat in our hypothetical farm town at different prices per bushel, assuming all factors that influence the decision of how many bushels to sell are held constant, except price. Notice that as the price per bushel of wheat falls, the quantity supplied of bushels decreases, and vice versa. This relationship is known as the law of supply, which says that a greater quantity will be supplied as higher relative prices than at lower relative prices, ceteris paribus. In other words, if nothing changes except price, sellers respond to an increase in price by increasing quantity supplied and to decrease in price by decreasing quantity supplied. There is a direct or positive relationship between price and quantity supplied. The model shows the supply curve for bushels of wheat in the hypothetical farm town. It slopes upward to the right, as indicated by the law of supply. At a price of $2 per bushel, quantity supplied is 10 billion bushels of wheat per year. At a price of $1.50, quantity supplied is 5 billion bushels of wheat per year. Decreasing price from $2 to $1.50 will decrease the incentive to supply bushels from 10 billion to 5 billion bushels of wheat. A movement along the supply curve is due to a change in price. However, sellers may change the quantity offered for sale at every price when a non-price influence of supply changes. A change in supply is graphed as a shift of the supply curve. An increase in supply is represented by a rightward shift of the supply curve, such as the shift from farmer 1 to farmer 2. As supply increases or shifts to the right, farmers are willing and able to sell more of this product at every price. For example, if the price is $4, firms want to sell 200 units rather than 75 units to maximize their profits. A decrease in supply is illustrated by a leftward shift of the supply curve, such as the shift from farmer 1 to market supply line in the model. There are many events that can cause supply to shift. Some events cause supply to increase and shift to the right. Other events cause supply to decrease and shift to the left. Generally, a market supply curve shifts as a result of a change in the costs of production. Changes in the cost of production affect supply decisions. When suppliers can produce their product at a lower cost, the result is an increase in supply. Holding product price the same, lower production costs mean higher profits, and higher profits motivates firms to sell more at each price. The cheaper raw materials or lower wage rates cause costs of production to fall and supply to increase and shift to the right, while more expensive inputs cause supply to decrease or shift to the left. Improved technology used to produce the output causes supply to increase or shift to the right. Technological advancements have the effect of making it cheaper to produce or provide a good or service. For example, advances in telecommunications have made it cheaper to provide cellular service, and the development of microchips have made personal computers smaller and cheaper to produce. Advances in technology are assumed to increase supply. If a given technology made it more expensive to produce that same product, a firm would not adopt it, as doing so would increase the cost of production and diminish their revenue streams. Changes in the price of other producible goods can also affect the supply curve. If there is more than one possible product that the seller can make with available resources, then a change in one product price can affect the supply of the other product. For example, if the price of wheat increases, the supply of corn can fall, as farmers plant wheat instead of corn. The change in the price of wheat will cause a movement along the supply curve of wheat and a shift of the supply curve of corn. Just like the number of buyers influences a change in demand, the number of firms can influence a change in supply. An increase in the number of sellers causes the market supply curve to increase, or shift to the right, like so, while a decrease in the number of sellers causes the market supply curve to decrease, or shift to the left. If sellers' expectations change, the supply curve may shift as a result. For example, if sellers expect the price of their product to rise in the future, they may hoard the product, hoping to sell it later at higher prices. This behavior causes supply to decrease in the present period. Supply functions may change in response to changes in taxes and subsidies. Taxes effectively make selling a product more expensive, if it is the seller's duty to collect taxes on each sale and then send the money to the government. A subsidy is the opposite of a tax, with the government paying the seller and making it cheaper for sellers to provide the product. Thus, a tax or an increase in tax causes the supply to decrease or shift to the left, while a subsidy or an increase in a subsidy causes the supply to increase or shift to the right. Acts of nature may also be responsible for supply shifts in some cases, especially in agricultural markets. For example, unusually good weather can cause a bumper crop, resulting in increased supply. However, floods or droughts can reduce supply by destroying crops and shifting supply to the left. The last non-price determinant of supply that we will discuss relates to the first, cost of production. The more resources we have, the less scarce they are and can be purchased more cheaply. As a result, the more available the resource, the cheaper it is for firms to acquire, which makes products cheaper. This would lead to an increase in supply, ceteris paribus. Once again, common sense is the best guide when analyzing events to determine whether supply shifts or demand shifts, and the direction of those shifts. This allows you to move from a real-world event to a prediction about how that event will likely affect product prices, production levels, and consumption levels. This final step reveals the purpose and value of demand and supply analysis to anyone who has ever asked a question like, "Why is the price of gasoline so high?" or "Why are cell phones so cheap?" Don't forget that a change in price causes a movement along the supply curve and therefore a change in the quantity supplied, while other events cause supply to change and shift. All right, see you next time.